there's actually an energy frequency around sovereignty. There's an experience of it. It's not just something that we set on a shelf and we're like, oh, this is sovereignty and someday I'm going to get there. There's an actual accumulation of source code and of energy and of frequency that actually makes you start to feel like, oh, I'm actually holding the attainment. I'm actually holding the energy, the frequency, whatever word you want to associate with that, of a more sovereign being. That's just what the Kundalini practice really helped me do, is just feel like, oh, I'm building the energy to be a sovereign being.
Welcome back to the Medicin podcast. My name is Mimi, and I have my glorious partner in life and love and podcasting next to me here.
What is going on, everybody? This is Chase. We are getting spiritual today, baby. Let's go. We got Vanessa Lambert on the Medicin podcast. Welcome, my friend.
Oh, thank you so much. I love that. Yes, we are getting so spiritual. Let's do this.
Spiritual AF. Let's go.
Yeah, totally. Getting high on our own supply.
Yeah. Probably something you do on the daily, right?
Yes, it is. Actually, it's kind of a regular practice.
And arguably something that more of us should be doing on a regular basis. So, which I'm hoping we can obviously jump into and talk about today, how people can do that for themselves, of course. Before we do that, the first question that we ask every guest on the Medicin is, what do you love in your life? What aspect of your life do you love so much that you wish you could gift it to every human?
Oh gosh, this is so good. And there's so many things that I could say, but just undoubtedly it would be my sovereignty. And I think that that's something that, we think about, we pay a lot of lip service to, but to actually have sovereignty is, it's like the greatest gift to yourself and to others, to be fair. And it's something I wish everybody to experience, is just feeling that they are the ones in charge of their life, in charge of their thought forms, in charge of how they occur to themselves and others. Well, maybe not others. We can't really control that, but we'll let them have that one. But, it's just this idea that you actually really get to create your own reality and you really get to live in the context of your own making. And I think that is probably my biggest wish for everyone.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's such a sweet spot for how we pivot into making this world a more beautiful place, because what comes with the acceptance of one's own sovereignty is also the responsibility of creating a life that is abundant and a life that is full of love and promise, which can be something that poses resistance to many. Like, that responsibility is actually a weight. With it, the opportunity for something profound and amazing, but also risk of, quote unquote failure. And so I think that freedom and sovereignty are often said as if we want them, but deep down, I think there's an inherent fear towards what that's like when it's actually all on me.
Yeah, I think just piggybacking on that, it's like when we're a teenager and we're like, I just want to be 21 so I can do whatever I want, and I'm out of the house and my parents won't bug me and I can drive anywhere I want. And then you get to be an adult and you realize oh crap, adulting is hard. There's so
much responsibility.
There's a lot of responsibility. And I think that kind of extrapolates out into when we are adults and we're kind of moving through life, maybe not so consciously, feeling not so sovereign, feeling that things are happening to us and we don't realize. Sometimes, you don't know what you don't know. We may not realize that we can actually take control. Maybe not control is the right word, but lean into a more sovereign way of being. But as Chase said, that's becoming an actual adult, and it comes with weight and responsibility, but also it's the only real definition of freedom, obviously.
So beautiful. I mean, and it's so true. And there's this beautiful Marianne Williamson quote, which is quite extensive, but the basis of it is that it's not our darkness that we're afraid of. It's our light that we're most scared of. And it's a huge responsibility, because now you're like, oh my gosh, I can't blame anyone. I can't be the victim. I can't say it's the way I was raised, or, you can even blame your lineage. You can't even say like, oh, well, I was born into this lineage, so this is how it is. If you really take full sovereignty and full responsibility for who you are.
Totally.
Yeah.
I love that quote, and that book changed my life.
Yeah.
So beautiful. Yes.
Well,
Yes.
I want to pull on that a little bit, because you're speaking to it so beautifully. And obviously, Chase and I aren't perfect, but we do our best to live in such a way. But I'm curious, for you, in your background, were you always like this? Did you always feel sovereign, or when did that actually happen, if you can kind of point to it?
I certainly have not always lived a sovereign experience. And I have also been searching for it, I would say, for my entire life. And I really feel like I had this natural sort of like freedom fighter mentality, even as a little girl. It's like, I didn't like being told what to do. I didn't like that, people would just say, this is how it is, or something has always been this way, so that's just how it is. Like, that always just rubbed me the wrong way. And so I think, as, even just a very young child and a very like new mind on the planet, I was like, it can't be like this. Like, I know that this is how all the adults say that it is, but it just doesn't make sense to me. And so I feel like I was just naturally drawn towards this path to freedom, to like discover what freedom was for me. And I honestly think that I tried so many different things. I mean, plant medicine journeys, and my husband and I run a wellness company, and we take people all over the world on these incredible peak experiences. And it's like, I literally say, I was in all the circles, all the squares, climbed all the mountains, just like looking for, where's the place where I find this ultimate sense of freedom. And honestly, I really believe that it wasn't until I landed at the doorstep of my Dharma, which is my kundalini yoga practice, that I started to actually understand this sovereignty piece and what it means to really be 100% responsible for your energy. And it was the teachings in that lineage that finally started to help me feel like I was pulling back the curtain on what it really means to be a sovereign being, and to, for all intents and purposes, be on a path to total liberation. And that's really what the Kundalini teachings and practices are here to help us with, is to help you find that liberation in your spirit. And so I think that, I'm probably not there, of course, I'm still on the journey, but it really was, that was the moment where I was like, okay, I think I'm actually making progress.
Awesome.
So finding your mission, your purpose, if you want to call it that, your Dharma is the word you used, was really kind of the impetus to push you towards sovereignty, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. And just realizing like that there's actually an energy frequency around sovereignty. Like there's an experience of it. It's not just something that we set on a shelf and we're like, oh, this is sovereignty, and someday I'm going to get there. There's an actual accumulation of source code and of energy and of frequency that actually makes you start to feel like, oh, I'm actually holding the attainment. I'm actually holding the energy, the frequency, whatever word you want to associate with that, of a more sovereign being. Like I actually have the kind of energy field that is related to. And I feel like that's just what the Kundalini practice really helped me do, is just feel like, oh, I'm building the energy to be a sovereign being.
Love that. And you hinted at it a little bit, where you're taking people through, peak experiences. But what are you currently doing in the world today? What are you offering in the world today? How are you bringing this light and this passion and these breakthroughs that you've had in your journey to the world?
Yeah, there's a few veins, I guess you could say, that kind of come in and intersect with me in various places and spaces. And you mentioned one of them. My husband and I run a company called Be the Wellness. And we, it's been our mission to take people all over the planet for over a decade now, really celebrating and having peak experiences. So, hiking the Salcantay Trail to Machu Picchu, or going on an African safari, or, whitewater rafting down like the highest rapid in New Zealand, like really going out on the planet and having these extraordinary experiences, and really starting to feel as though we're expanding as people through those modalities. And then there's the other side. So that's kind of like the more masculine side. We're like out there on the trail and out there, adventuring and kind of like being in our masculine a little bit. And then the other side that really I am super committed to is the kundalini teachings and teaching that modality. And then I also teach a certification in the Akashic Records, which I know we're going to dive into because some people aren't really familiar with it, or it's one of those modalities that's kind of hard to grab onto. So I'm sure we'll dive into it a little bit more, but those are kind of the places and spaces that, I'm inhabiting.
Yeah.
I love that. One thing came up when you were talking about getting on the planet, being in your masculine and exploring. How does the exploration that you're providing for these groups of people, how does that relate to spirituality?
So I'm so glad you asked this, because I actually didn't even realize that this is what we were doing in our company, Be the Wellness, until years later. But what I really believe is that there are certain energy grids on the planet, certain ley lines, if you will. And so when you travel to these locations, you're actually getting the energetic codes of the land there. And, there's places all over the planet where they've built temples, or, they've had sacred rites, or they've done spiritual practices. And a lot of that had to do with the way the energy was held there. And so I didn't even really realize that we were doing that with our company, Be the Wellness. But I think a lot of the impetus for the places we chose and the types of adventures and experiences we took people on were that there was a super high frequency in those areas. And so now looking back, I'm like, oh, that's why we wanted to go to Machu Picchu. Like, that's why we're taking people to Egypt. That's why we're going to Africa. Like, because it's not just about the adventure, which is obviously so beautiful and fun and powerful just in itself, but it was more about the energy and the field of experience that's held on the planet there, and taking people and having them actually absorb those frequencies into their aura and into their bodies. So it's kind of cool, because looking back, I'm like, oh, this makes so much sense. And you start to see how the worlds kind of interplay with one another.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Totally resonate with that. We recently, I guess in November, so a few months ago, we just spent 3 weeks in Egypt. So I totally get it. I mean, we were at a different megalithic site or temple or structure every day. And sometimes, many days it was multiple structures, temples in one day. And there is I know we can both attest to what you're saying, that there is a certain type of energy frequency, whatever spiritual language you want to slap on it, you feel different in different places of the earth.
100%. 100%.
Especially somewhere like Egypt, where there's such a vast, rich history that I don't care how many hours you spend on Google reading about Egypt, there's no way that you could fully understand everything that happened and went on there. Maybe you looking into the Akashic Records, but
yeah,
for the lay person who's just visiting as a tourist, it's like, I feel something and I don't know what went on here, but it feels different.
And, even places here in the US, I'm thinking about places like Mount Shasta. I know you guys are in Southern California, or even Joshua Tree, or there's just certain energies in these places, and you really can't get it until you go there. And I think it's one of the reasons that so many people catch the travel bug, right? It's like, how many countries can I get to in this lifetime? But I think what really, part of that innate longing is that you want to feel the codes of planet Earth. You want to feel the frequency. You want to experience the different ley lines and vortexes and all of that stuff. So I just think it's such a cool way to think about traveling too, because you may not even realize why you're being called to a location. But when you think of it from this point of view, you're like, I can't wait to find out, when I get there, what's going to happen.
Yeah, I love that.
We have a family home up in North Idaho, and it's at Priest Lake, and the whole lake is quartz crystal, and the mountains are quartz crystals. And we're growing up, and we're like, God, this place is so awesome. Like, we feel so relaxed here. We sleep so much better, and we're just like, Crazy coincidence.
Just supposed to be the outdoors.
Yeah, now we, start understanding energy and frequencies and then crystals specifically. And it's like, oh yeah, total, the entire lake that is sitting on a bed of quartz crystals and it completely makes sense why it's just this oasis for us.
It's so cool. And, they talk about a lot of sacred sites being built on quartz veins or other crystal veins. And, maybe the people of the time didn't even realize that was happening, but they could, like you're saying, you could just feel, I don't know, when I'm here, I just feel different. So I love that you have that experience. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's move into a little bit of the Akashic Records work. I think, and I'm speaking for myself here as well as hopefully some of the listeners. Like this is a term that I've heard and I sort of loosely understand, but it's kind of like when you skip like elementary school and you just start hearing about concepts in college and you're like, okay, I can sort of understand this, but I miss the entire like introductory phase. When I hear about it, I'm like, this sounds like, some Indiana Jones shit that someone could be tapping into. And so I'd love to get a little breakdown on what the Akashic Records is, and then what you do in order to empower people to work with them in their life.
Yeah, it is one of those concepts that really is tricky to wrap your brain around because it's kind of just an energy field. It's just a shift in sort of the frequency that you're interacting with. And so from a technical standpoint or from just kind of a definitive standpoint, people talk about the Akashic Records being a vault of information of everything that's ever happened, and specifically everything that's ever happened to your soul. So it's kind of like if you were to think of, time linearly, since that's how we do it here on planet Earth, you could think of, a line that is your soul, right? And the Akashic Records is almost like the place, the vault of information that stores that whole line of information, that whole data set, if you will. And so sometimes people describe it as a library, like it's, where all the books of information live about your soul. Some people describe it as like a hard drive. And so every thought you think or every experience you have is, ingrained into the hard drive. So there's different ways that people conceptualize it. But I mean, really what I like to help people just kind of lean into is that it's almost like pushing deeper into your intuitive sense. And that's how most people experience the Akashic Records, is through these intuitive senses that we often call like the clairs, like clairvoyance or claircognizance or clairaudience. We can dive into what all of those mean, but they're these intuitive frequencies that we have. And so that's often how people experience the records, because it is so difficult to be like, okay, there's this vault, this library in the sky that holds all the information. Like, what does that even mean? It's just silly, right? Totally. But if you're like, what it means on the court is like, you can actually go deeper into your intuition. You can go deeper into your own knowing about yourself, about your soul, about your path, even about, maybe the contracts you have at a soul level with others. And so it's a way for you to just have a deeper understanding about what's happening to you in your life and why. And I think that's kind of the best way to just simplify it, is like, why am I who I am? What happened to me maybe in my past lives, or, what is all this experience and data that is forming me in the way that I am now? And do I want to interface with it in a more intelligent way?
So Chase and I last year had a session with a friend who was recommended to us by another friend, Roseanne, and we did a past life regression where Chase and I were sitting together, and she did a past life regression session with us. And the way that you're explaining going deeper into your own intuition. I've never heard the Akashic Records explained that way, but when you explain it that way, it makes me think of what I experienced. I can't necessarily speak for Chase, but what I experienced in that past life regression, it was almost like a dream state. It wasn't like a plant medicine ceremony. It wasn't hallucinating. It was like nothing else mattered in the world besides what I was feeling in my body. And it was just more open than my regular day-to-day intuitive nudges that I get about things. And so it's kind of hard to explain, but as you are. That's what it makes me think of. Is that anywhere close to what you're talking about?
Exactly. And what you're actually speaking to is what we call in the yogic from the yogic perspective, we call the subtle field. And so when we're talking about the subtle field, it quite literally is that. It's the subtle energy that is us and that we're interacting with, that we're interfacing with us, that has this, this radiance, more information, more intelligence. And when we're working in the subtle field or we're in contact with it, we feel suddenly slightly like we do in a psychedelic state, but it's not quite there. It's softer, it's subtle, right? And so it's almost a dream-like state, or it's a dream-like energy. And that's really because we're just interacting with this realm of existence that is referred to as the subtle field. And in the yogic teachings, they say that the only thing that you take with you when you die is your soul. And it collapses into the subtle body, which is like literally the energy field that can take you out into the subtle field. And that's where the soul remains until it decides where it's going next. And so exactly what you're talking about, it's hard to explain because a lot of people who've done plant medicine, particularly, they think of this energy as only psychedelic. So they think of okay, it's going to be like when I'm on mushrooms, or it's going to be like ayahuasca, or it's going to be like that. But it's a different energy field, and you're speaking exactly to it. It's just a slightly softer energy, a slightly dreamier energy, and that's really where all this magic is held.
Yeah. No, that's a perfect way to put it, because it did feel like wildly less intense than a psychedelic journey, but equally profound and kind of mind-blowing that you can just out of sobriety transition into this phase of the metaphysical. How do you see people using or working with this other dimension, or this information that they're getting from their Akashic records in a way that is quite benefit? I think of almost like the story of the Christmas Carol, where the ghosts of Christmas past come and take Scrooge and show him these different areas of his life, and they're able to give him perspective and give him sort of this vision of his life at large, where he's able to sort of see things unattached from the situation itself and be able to leverage it for his own benefit going back into his bodily form. And so I'm thinking about how is this beneficial for people? And similarly to the past life regression, where I'm okay, well, I can sort of see how having this perspective and being able to zoom out and look at these sort of nuances and learnings across lifetimes or across circumstances in one's life could then be applied to where you're at in 2023. But is that even close to how this is beneficial?
Yeah, one of the things I love kind of comparing it to this, because, we're leaving this era that we referred to as the Piscean era. And that's quite literally where we are astrologically as a planet, where we're moving through in the cosmos. And we're leaving the Piscean era and we're coming into the age of Aquarius. And what that means is, in the age of Aquarius, we have way more access to information. We have way more access to all of the energy fields. And if you just think about historically the way that we accessed God in this Piscean era, it was much more masculine. It was through a priest, a preacher. You had your line to God was through this specific person who had access to the higher ups. And it was not expected, and in quite literally it was shunned, particularly for women in that time. This is why we had the witch hunts and such, is because these were women who did have access to these kinds of realms. And at that time, the powers that be did not like that, right? They wanted the access to God to come through the church. And so as we move into this Aquarian age, what we're experiencing as a planet is that we now all have access to God. And that's kind of what this Akashic Records whole thing is. It's you don't have to necessarily go to a reader or someone else to get the information about your soul. You can actually learn these techniques and learn these modalities so that you have access to this field. You have access to God. You have access to whatever you call that. And I love that kind of comparison, because I think it helps us understand why this is helpful. What we realize is that we just have more access to any of the spiritual information that is about us. And shouldn't we be the keepers of that information? Isn't that appropriate for us?
Yeah.
What about the Aquarian age versus the Piscean age unlocks or unleashes or allows the potential for us to now have more information, as you say?
Yeah, so the way that we think about this, and I'm not an astrologer, so this isn't necessarily like a place that I dive in super deep, but I do understand it with regard to when we're moving from one phase to another. And quite literally what happens is we are affected by the planets and we're affected by what's happening cosmologically. And so when we're in certain phases, one planet, one area of the sky, and everything that's in that area of the sky will have a more profound effect on us because we're more directly linked to it, right? Like we're getting more energy from that particular aspect of the cosmology. And so as we, change, literally our location changes in the sky, we start being influenced by other planetary information and kind of imprints. And so when we move into the age of Aquarius, we're getting more of the information from that location of the sky where like literally the sign of Aquarius is. And the sign of Aquarius is all about access to information. And so this is what's so magical, I think, about the human experience is that we have this sovereign, this need and this want to be sovereign, but we're being influenced by so many things, including the stars, the planet, the skies, like everything is influencing us because we're all part of it, right? We're all intertwined in this energy field. We're all one, right? Really. And so I think that it's really helpful to understand in accessing your sovereignty, it's good to know what you're being influenced by, like what's coming at you that might be kind of like making a dent in you that you don't even realize. So as we move in, to this era of of the age of Aquarius, we just have access to being able to see more, to be able to get into these fields of information. We just are available to the resources that are coming through.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm trying to like bro science and bro astrology through this.
Please.
And so of course I'm thinking of like, hey, as human beings, we go through 4 seasons in the year. We put coats on and we cover our bodies in the winter. We have less access to certain elements of nature to get information from nature during that period of time, but it's a period of time for rest and restoration. And then when the spring comes, we're able to access nature to a certain degree that we weren't prior. Subsequent to that, there's summer. And so I look at the earth as a human sort of like or a body, I should say, an entity in and of itself. And then there's these seasons that it goes through as well, us being sort of like a subsidiary of that earthly body. We're also getting the impact of Earth's seasonal rotation through the cosmos. And with that comes this different energetic exchange of its environment that we then take on ourselves. Yeah,
it's kind of like what, we were just watching a video last night on the Hermetic principles, and it makes me think of the cause and effect law. I think it's with this law, the as within, so without, as above, so below, as with the universe, so with the soul. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
And so
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah. So it just makes me, everything is cyclical, seasonal, and every season has a different energetic stamp on
100%.
the earth, the soul, the person, society, culture. And, anyone who's listening to this who I'm sure there are a lot of people where this is resonating and they're with us. They're 100% like, yeah, this is awesome. There might be someone who is like, what? That sounds kind of crazy. Maybe they're not all the way
That's
on.
my husband. He's in the other room.
Maybe they're not all the way on the astrology chain, even though we talk about astrology all the time. Maybe there's someone who's like, what is this? But we know for a fact, even, the police force knows that there are higher crime rates around a full moon. That's where we get the word lunatic from. Luna, lunar, lunatics, crazy person, right? The moon in all of its phases and as women, we know this, we're affected by the moon, humans in general are. So this isn't something that's so crazy. It's proven and shown in a myriad of different ways in our culture that we're just like, we're just used to, but maybe we haven't heard it explained in that way. But ask any police officer, I guarantee you, around a full moon, there are higher rates of crime because the moon affects us as a society.
100%.
So why
Yeah.
would these bigger, like huge, grand celestial bodies not be also influencing us?
And that's the thing. This is actually beautiful because what you're speaking to is that there's just pieces we don't know yet. And the beautiful thing about the age of Aquarius is that, you know, the basically the way that they talk about this age is that we're going to start understanding better. And that's the cool thing. We're in this era, and even just having these conversations is adding to that. It's actually even the fact that we're talking about this right now is exemplary of that. This is true because these conversations were not existing in the capacity and the, you know, the depth and the amount that they are now on planet Earth. And so even if you just look at that, you're like, oh, okay, well, that is a way that I could understand what this age of Aquarius, this age of information is. Look at all of the podcasts, look at all of these, you know, different ways and modalities in which we receive information that just weren't here 30 years ago. So, I mean, even if you just want to anchor it in with those like very stable, you know, facts that are easy to wrap your brain around, like even that is proof of in itself.
No, that's a really good point. So how do we get our library card to to the Akashic Record? Like obviously it's not a plant medicine journey, but is it you know, hypnosis? Is it meditation? Like how are people accessing this realm?
Yeah, so the way that you access the realm is through a prayer. And you know, some people say that you can access it without a prayer. You know, I like to say, like, I feel as though you, again, in your sovereign state, should decide for yourself what's happening and if you have access to this realm just by doing a meditation. So the way that I learned is that you access it through a prayer. And the way that I think about that is it's almost like sound codes are the way that you unlock this realm. And I learned from my teacher, so I used her prayer. And then as I started working in the Akashic Records, they actually gave me my own prayer. And so one day when I was in the records, they said, you know, just pick up a pen. I picked up a pen. They channeled a prayer and I wrote it out just in one shot. And then that became literally the keys to the Akashic Records for me. And then the idea is that when you receive your own prayer, it's also the Akashic Records kind of saying, okay, it's time for you to teach others about this wisdom body and how to access it. So if you guys want, we can open your records and we can have a bit of an experience today and kind of help the audience understand. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, totally. I got before we jump into that, use my rational brain a few more times here.
Yeah, I love it.
You talked about one. I'm curious as to how long you've had this sort of like connection to this other dimension, but you also mentioned the clairs, and so maybe getting a little explanation around either one for you and your experience. Like, is this something you've always had? Have you been able to sort of like sharpen these tools in a way that you're able to access them, you know, easier, quicker? And then is this something that everybody potentially has access to? And how do we sort of like find them in this process and maybe going through them, clairaudience, clairvoyance, and some of the others?
Yeah. And I really believe that everybody does have access to it. And I think that some people come into it more naturally. I certainly had an affinity for it. I think even as a young child, just definitely kind of walked a bit on the other side and sort of had that interdimensionality about myself. But I didn't learn about it in a technical sense until around 2008 when I studied. I actually studied with these women that were graduates of the Berkeley Psychic Institute method, which is like a pretty rigorous psychic school, university in Berkeley, California. So I did an internship with them for a year and they actually taught me about it. But I think that, you know, everyone has access to it. It's just about kind of finding a teacher or finding a way that you can start tuning in with it. And really what I help my students and do in my trainings is help people understand that subtle field that we were talking about before. Because what happens a lot is that there is information coming in, but because it's not just smacking you over the head or you're not in kind of a psychedelic experience, it's hard to actually trust it because you're like, well, maybe I'm just imagining this. Maybe I'm making this up, right? And so one of the things I always say to students is, well, why, of all the things you can make up right now in this moment, why are you making this up?
Mhm.
Like, why is this the thing you're conjuring up? Because there's something to that. You could be thinking any thought, a billion gajillion thoughts, and this is the thing that's coming in and consolidating for you. So a lot of this process is just learning to like really distill, oh yeah, I am actually experiencing this, and then turn into it. What is this? Why am I experiencing this? Why am I thinking this thought? Why am I visualizing this in my mind? Why am I feeling this emotion in my stomach? Like, this is all the subtle energy that's coming in. And sometimes you just need someone to help you navigate that space.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. Got it.
Oh, so can you explain the different clairs? I don't think we've ever gone into
I don't think
those
so.
on another episode. So that would, I think, be helpful. Good refresher for us, but also for the listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is really cool because when we go in, I'll invite the audience to follow along. Like, if you want to drop in kind of almost like it's a guided meditation, but if you want to be in the records, you can. We'll make sure that you have an access out there wherever you are listening to this. But the way that I think is really awesome to think about your experience is to be on watch or kind of be on lookout for the clairs. So I mentioned the first one, which is clairvoyance. And this is pretty common. A lot of people have this. It's when you actually see visuals. And, you know, obviously when we do psychedelics, a lot of people see visuals. So that might be a way in which people are familiar with that. But the only difference is that it is much more subtle. So, you know, for those of you who've done psychedelics out there, sometimes the visuals can be really strong. And I think that helps you believe that they're real.
Mm.
And so when you're working in the Akashic Records, it can be more subtle. It's almost like, is that my imagination? Like, is that just me thinking that thought? And so now I'm seeing a vision around it. But that is a clair. That's clairvoyance. That's you, again, thinking, visualizing that thought for a reason. So that is kind of the first one. Clairaudience is the second one. And that's when you actually hear sound. So sometimes I'll hear the ocean, even though I'm, you know, in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So we know that's not actually happening. Or I'll even hear a whisper of a voice, and you quite literally will hear information coming through. So, and you know, usually people have one or more of these that are online, and then the others will develop over time. The next one is clairempathy, and that's when you straight up feel the emotion. You feel the emotion of whatever the energy is that you're looking at or interfacing with. It could even be, you know, you're thinking about a specific situation and you feel the emotion of it.
Oh my God. I've totally had that
Yeah.
in journeys. Holy shit. Yeah.
Yes. And, you know, so many people know this because they'll call themselves empaths, right? This is basically what they're saying. They're empathic. They're someone that feels emotion very deeply, and they're very sensitive to emotion. So obviously clairempathy, that, you know, they're kissing cousins. They're in the same room. Clairsentience is when you have intuition. So you have that gut feeling, right? You're just like, I have a feeling. I don't know why I have this gut feeling, but this is what's coming through for me. And then we've got clairaudience, which is the ability to smell. So you'll actually, like the example I always give is that once I was in the Akashic Records and I could smell my grandma's perfume, and she's a very specific perfume. And I mean, my grandma's been passed away now for over 10 years, 15 years now. So like, it's not around me, you know, it's obviously not in the room at all. And so though you'll actually start to smell, you know, different scents that are meaningful for you. And then the other one that we talk about is claircognizance. This is kind of similar to clairsentience, but it's a little bit different in the sense that claircognizance is like, I just know this information and I don't know why I know it. Where clairsentience is almost like a gut feeling, right? Like you've got like, I don't know, I just feel that this is the right thing. Claircognizance is like, I know this information, and like almost where you're like, do I actually know this? Did I learn this somewhere? Or like, why do I think I know this? So it's just a feeling of like that data set is somehow inside of you. You have access to it. And then there's clairgustance, which is taste. And the example I like to use for this one is like, sometimes I'll taste salt water or I'll even get like a sour taste in the back of my throat, like when you're, chewing on something really sour. So that is another, kind of sentience that will come online for some people. And then the last one is clairagency. And this is when we see all of those psychic shows that we know and love. And they're like, do you have an item from the person that you'd like me to contact? And they, give them like, yes, here's Uncle Sammy's favorite frog toy or whatever it is, and they're like, oh yes, I see Uncle Sammy is very happy on the other side. So clairagency is when you can touch an object and you can actually feel energy and information come through the object of that person or of that situation. So all of this to say, you can start to see why it really is when you're working in the Akashic Records. It's like, oh, I'm turning up all of these intuitive senses, all of the sentience that, is innately in me somewhere. I just haven't maybe tapped into it and really acknowledged it and worked with it.
Yeah, that's so much more expansive than I thought it was.
Yeah.
I didn't know there were so many. That's really awesome.
Definitely, I've heard of most of them, but a few of the taste and the smell and the agency one was definitely new. Just to, I guess, anchor that a little bit, as you're explaining them, I definitely can think back on very specific moments, experiences where, like, say the claircognizance, I think is the kind of like the noetic sense where it's like it almost feels like it's matrixed into your mind, like the movie The Matrix, where he's like, I know kung fu.
Yes, and exactly.
I've come out of certain experiences, and it is this like download effect where it's like, I don't know how I know this, but I just do. And so that one definitely stuck out for me. I've felt that many times. The clairaudience, I've only experienced a couple times where I heard something, but it's almost like it didn't come through my ear. It's almost like it came from within me. Like I heard it inside of my body, but it wasn't my own thought. I wasn't sitting there thinking thoughts. And then I was like, did I just hear a voice? It was like something inside of me was speaking to me, but it was also separate from me.
Yeah. And you can hear it both ways. Sometimes you will hear it externally, quite literally, like somebody's talking or speaking to you. And sometimes you're right. It'll almost just be like sound current within that is just being illuminated in some way that you're like, okay, those are not my sound codes, but for some reason I can hear it. So I totally, I think that's a perfect way of describing it.
One last question that's related, but maybe unrelated. I hear tones from time to time, like a loud, usually it's from my left side, a loud, like there's someone in the room ringing a bell.
Yes. Yeah.
And I've asked a couple people, but I'm curious to hear what you think or what you believe that is.
So I really do think that's one of your clairs. I really do think that that's you hearing. And so the way that I think about that and makes sense for me is I think that sometimes there are codes being downloaded into your aura, into your soul, into the DNA of your energy field. And then it's time for you to receive those codes and that you're actually taking those in. And so many people talk about this all the time, like certain codes are being broadcast at the planet and people talk about those coming from extraterrestrials or maybe coming from the cosmos, whatever it is. And I honestly, I think that's a journey of self-discovery for you to decide. And the Akashic Records can be a great place to look at that and ask, what is that? Why did that happen? But I do think that they are certain sound codes that you're ready to receive. And almost like the way I think of it is if you had like, it's like Swiss cheese, right? It's got like all these holes. And it's almost like if the other pieces were to come in and fill, I think about those sound codes. It's like they're coming in and they're filling in the missing pieces that you're ready to receive. And so, there could be all kinds of reasons why that's happening, but I do believe it's because you're ready to receive it.
That's interesting. Yeah. When I've heard a similar explanation, one of my friends was like, Yeah, pay attention. I think actually Roseanne, I spoke of her earlier. I asked her and she said something very similar to what you were saying. She was like, pay attention to what you're hearing in the, sober 3D reality that you're sitting in, whether it's something you're watching or maybe you're listening to a podcast and you hear that tone. And just be aware of like what's going on in your environment and that there could be something more for you to receive in that moment is kind of how she explained it to me, which made a lot of sense. It almost reminds me of like a dinner bell being rung where it's like, hey, something's ready.
Yep. Order up.
Listen up. Like just getting someone's attention is kind of how I think of it. It doesn't happen too often, but maybe once a quarter. And so I do try to like, what's going on? It happened one time when shout out to After School. One time when we were watching an after school video, which is a YouTube channel that we love. And our friend is the animator there. And I just remember a really strong bell in my ear. And and what he talks about are a lot of esoteric, deeper truths. And so that was just one that stuck out to me. But they've happened a few times. It's kind of fun.
Well, and I think they talk about, planet Earth ascending, right? Like they speak to this thing of like, we're going from 3D to 4D to 5D. Mm-hmm. And you're kind of like, but what does that mean? And I think actually this is a great way to think about it, is that like the actual sounds are changing, the frequencies are changing. And so as we're up regulating into those new sound currents, we might go through that little process of like, ooh, mm-hmm. I'm not used to this sound current, right? And so as I'm coming into it, it's like, like a dog whistle, right? Where the dog's like, whoa, yeah. You're coming online with those sounds. And then maybe you synthesize with it, you harmonize with it, and it starts to fade because now, okay, I have that in my energy field. And I think it's a cool way to think about the ascension process is through sound. So I love it. So you're, no big deal. You were just ascending.
Last thing I'm going to say about that. How many times have I complained about my ears being sensitive?
Yeah.
My ears are so sensitive, even dishes. We'll be listening to the same podcast and I'm like, oh God, can you please turn that down? Like it's cringy to me. It's so sensitive. And just another little.
And I think, that's essentially like you're being shown that is a sentience that you have, and when you have that sensitivity, I would really lean into it, and like your friend and teacher already said, like, when that's happening, lean into it. Pay attention, what's going on, like, is something shifting? Because that's really a gift. And not as many people have the three, the scent, the taste, and the hearing, the scent, taste, and hearing are the three least common. So it's actually quite rare that that's a stronger sentience that you have. So I would really nurture that because it's very special.
Interesting. Yeah, not so much in journeys. It's more like sober reality for me. But anyways, I can stop talking about me.
I love it. No, this is
or whatever. But I am trying to give context for myself, just kind of selfishly while you're here with us. And then also for the listener who maybe has experienced, whether it's the cognizance or the sentience or the hearing or the taste, like maybe they've wondered themselves, like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Maybe in deep meditation or what have you.
Pull on the thread. Yeah, it's little flirts.
Yeah,
I love it.
Absolutely. And actually, the one that my husband has is sense. He's super, super sensitive to smell. And he always just thought, whatever's going on in his olfactory system. And I'm like, yeah, but that's actually a sentience. Like, that's a higher intelligence. You can, just like a dog can smell so much more of the world. Like, he has an elevated, spectrum of scent. And I'm like, it's an intelligence all of its own. So I think it's really cool that you brought that up with the hearing, because people might be thinking, oh yeah, I do have a sensitive nose, or I am sensitive to sound, or even, what you see, like light. Some people are super sensitive to light. Like, all of these things are gifts if we nurture them.
Yeah. I love that. I love that reframe. Yeah.
Which one popped up or resonated with you, or multiple?
Well, I've thought about the times that it's funny. I'm not an empathetic person necessarily in my waking sober life. In
he
fact,
says he's not.
It's something I really work on as a partner and as a, entrepreneur and a leader. And, but I've had moments in deep meditations, not even necessarily been with psychoactives where I felt for instance, my uncle was terminally ill last year, and I was just meditating and just felt the weight of my entire family's sorrow for his death. And he did ultimately pass away. But up to that point, I hadn't really cried or anything. And I just felt the weight almost like I was my dad just mourning his brother's terminal illness. And it was just completely wrecked my entire body. And I was like, whoa, holy shit. And I've had that a couple times, even like in a journey. I felt the weight of loneliness from the divine, and just the feeling as if I was the only thing in the universe, as if I was source prior to its expression of life. And I felt the weight of loneliness and what that really means to be alone, to be the only thing in the universe. And it was just awful. I was weeping. Only until then I was shown what creation looked like and why creation was birthed out of loneliness and despair for being the only thing in the world is to see one's reflection and have the polarity to experience love. And it was just so intense. And this empathetic experience of understanding true loneliness was just like profound, and has brought so much meaning to my life over the last like year, just from those, that hour or whatever that was. But so, yeah, that's what comes up for me is like, oh yeah, I totally understand that.
And it's so beautiful, empathy is such an intense experience. And out of all of these clairs, the clairempaths, these are people that really need to learn how to manage this one, because it can be, I see this all the time where people are making jokes about being empaths, and that means that they go hide away in their house and they don't interface with the public, or like that's kind of the only way that we know how to deal with being empathic, right? Is to withdraw and retract from any experience that could imprint on us. And I think for the clairempaths out there, it's really important you have super strong skills and training to manage your energy and to manage this experience of interfacing with that empathic field. So I love that you said that, because I think that there's this thought that if you're an empath, you just shy away from all experience, but there's actually a way to really nurture it and become super powerful with it, and also not have it affect you in all of those kind of negative ways that we think of that, empaths struggle with. So it's really beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, let's do this thing.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. So, and I'll invite the audience out there. This is actually so fun. I'm so excited we're doing this. Because, the thing about it is we're talking about all of these things. And what I'll invite everybody to do is actually think about, when we open the Akashic Records and you go into your records, what are these experiences that you start to notice, right? Do you feel any emotion? Do you start to see any visions? If you're driving out there, please do not do this. Do this when you're in a safe space where you can close your eyes and actually have a deep experience. But for anyone that is, driving or a little hesitant about this process, you are more than welcome to just hang back and use this almost just like a guided meditation, or, just feel totally free to be an observer in this space. And then if at some point you want to come back to it and listen to it again and try it and go into it, that's perfectly fine. What I do is I actually ask for your permission to open the Akashic Records. So I'm going to ask for both of your permission, but then I'm going to also ask the audience from soul to soul. So my higher self to your higher self. And this is regardless of time and space. These truths and these permissions go beyond any timeline. So if you do want to go on this journey with me, you do want me to take you into your records, then just energetically give that permission. And if you don't give permission, and you're totally safe. I'm not going anywhere into your records, and would never trespass on anything without permission. So do I have your two permission, Chase and Mimi?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So let's just take some deep breaths and just start to just calm the physical body. And whenever we go into this space, it's really lovely to just acknowledge the physical form and how sometimes we have to adjust in the physical sense to the energy field that we're going into. So just nurturing the physical form through the breath here for a moment. And I'm just going to open the Akashic Records using my prayer, and I'll open it for Chase and Mimi, but I'll also open it for anyone out there who would like to have their own experience in this moment. From the north, south, east, and the west, as above, as below, may all angels, guides, seers, and the Great Spirit guide us in this journey. May our hearts be received and our visions be guided in light and love. May the deepest wisdom come forth for this group in this moment, and may we be supported by the ancients of all creation. The records are open with the greatest integrity to serve this group and all humankind. All is held in a stream of light and love. All is guided. All is protected. The records are now open. You are loved. So first, just take stock, take notice of any energy shift that's come in right away. Maybe you feel slightly different sensation in your physical form. Maybe there's a different energy in your thoughts. So just right away, start to notice any shift in your energy from before we opened the Akashic Records until now. And now I'd like you to actually travel to the Akashic Records. So for some people, this means that they actually feel like they go up out of their body into the cosmos. And then for others, it feels like maybe they just go deeper into themselves. And so the very first learning, the very first teaching that we can get right away here is to actually ask your own energy, where do my Akashic Records live? And just follow whatever comes through. Maybe it's just, again, a shift in energy. Maybe it's a pull towards going towards a different energy field. Maybe you actually see a new physical location in your mind's eye. And just go with it. Again, we're working in that subtle field. So notice the subtle shifts. Notice the subtle energy. And as any invitation into these spaces and places arises, just allow yourself to flow into it. And now, once you've arrived in whatever that destination is for you, again, maybe just a shift in the way you feel, maybe it's actually a physical location. Wherever that is, I want you to just get really comfortable. So find the most comfortable space, the most comfortable expression of this reality, of this location for you. And as you allow yourself to be gentle and to be held and to feel the comfort of this space, I want to invite you to just ask if there are any helpers, any light beings, any teachers or masters, any gurus or saints, maybe any entities or energies that you believe in, or even anybody who you've known and loved that could possibly be on the other side here to help you. So just opening your awareness to see, is there anyone that wants to come in and support you in this space? And sometimes, again, you'll see a physical person or energy, and other times you'll just feel a slight shift. Maybe you'll see a slight color change. Maybe just the light feels a little different. So again, just noticing the subtle changes and just being open, dilating yourself to the experience. And as we get comfortable here and acknowledge any helpers that may or may not have come in, I'd like to invite everyone to just ask the Akashic Records, why am I here? How, of all of the places in the world and all of the podcasts I could listen to and all of the things that I could be experiencing right now, why have I been called into the Akashic Records? what's here for me to experience, for me to see or understand, or maybe even just to feel. So I'm just going to give you a moment to ask that question. Why am I here? How was I brought to this moment into the Akashic Records? And I'm just going to give us all a moment of silence to just be in that conversation. And just remember, whatever thoughts are coming through, just pay attention to them. Even though it might feel like, oh, I just made that up. Why are you making that up? What is the thought you're having? What are the words? Just allow yourself to hold it, to hear it, and to just let it in, let it be. And now, for everybody out there, and for Chase and Mimi, I just want you to ask the Akashic Records, what's something I can bring back? What's something that I can share with someone in my life, someone who's important to me, maybe even a stranger, maybe someone that you encounter? What's something I can bring back from the Akashic Records that's helpful, that I could share, that's meaningful and beautiful, and can make a positive impact in some way, shape, or form? Again, just noticing any information that comes through. What can you bring back? What can you share? And now let's just start to wrap up. So one more time, just asking if there's anything that you can bring back. If there's any reason or why you've been called to the Akashic Records today. Just kind of closing those conversations, consolidating whatever's coming through or whatever has shown up. And then let's just thank the Akashic field. Let's thank any beings or any helpers that showed up today, whatever that looked like. Just thanking the energy, thanking ourselves, thanking these beautiful hosts who are bringing these sound currents into planet Earth. And now we're going to make our way out of the Akashic Records. So again, just consolidating this experience for yourself, whatever it may be. I'm just going to bring us out with a closing prayer. I give thanks to the north, south, east, and the west, all the elements, tattvas, the Great Spirit, angels and guides, guiding all with the hands of creation and love. May we be blessed and loved. May this reading close with the highest integrity to continue to serve and heal, and may all be held in a stream of light consciousness. Aho, the records are now closed. All right, so.
Hello, Master.
Wow.
That was great. That was beautiful. It felt really good. I'll leave it open to you to, I guess, ask wherever you want to take it. we're open to share, but that was really nice.
Yeah,
Very calming and
very deep, like very quick into a deep meditative state, which at noon on a freaking Wednesday with a busy schedule is like quite the accomplishment. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that's actually really helpful just to acknowledge right away, is that like there is just this shift. And you're just like, whoa, I just dropped into this, whatever, this space, this change. And so it's really beautiful to hear you both had that. Because often I think that that's something that people don't recognize right away. You know, they think like, well, yeah, I was in a guided meditation, so of course I got like a little sleepy or whatever, but that is a shift. Like you're changing in your energy field. So that's beautiful. And obviously that was very short, but you can imagine if you hang out there for an hour and you can go very deep, you can go very far, and it's quite incredible, like the places and spaces you can get to. So I'm glad you got a little drop in. Yeah. I want to hear from both of you just the answers to the questions that we asked. So why were you brought to the Akashic Records, and then anything helpful that you could bring back? And I think it's just beautiful to share that. So I don't know, Mimi, if you want to start.
Yeah, I totally can. Well, first I'll say, right when you said the Akashic Records are now open, my insides got like noticeably warmer. And in my, I had my eyes closed the entire time, but what flashed in front of my eyes was a pair of eyes, which I see a lot in plant medicine ceremonies and guided meditations. I don't necessarily know what these eyes mean, but I see them a lot. So I thought that was interesting. The question, the first question, why am I here in this moment? I didn't hear it, but I felt it, which is another common one for me. I feel drawn towards the card that I'm drawing. I feel like almost pulled towards the thing, and it definitely had that sensation again. And what was coming up for me was just to give permission to others. So, which definitely resonates with things that I talk about all the time, having a very strong like guide archetype in my life, being a permission slip for others they hear my experience, my genuine, authentic experience, take it or leave it, but this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm doing, and here's how it's benefited me. And being, like I said, almost like a permission slip for other people to allow themselves to go deeper inside their own experience. So that was my first. And then the second was, what can I bring back? What can I take out of this? And the answer that I felt was that it's okay to feel all the feelings that you're feeling, to feel them fully. And it's so on point, because this week, especially today and yesterday, I have felt very scattered, slightly stressed, kind of judgmental of my own experience, trying to figure a lot of things out. And sometimes I get judgmental of myself that I can't just push through that experience even and level-headed and not get riled up by anything, and that I'm not just this person floating on a cloud through life. I get judgmental of that sometimes, because I do know how much the energy I take into everything affects. It's like a ripple effect, and so I'm very mindful of that. And just this feeling of like, dude, it's totally okay to just feel everything that you're feeling. That is the human experience, is feeling all the things and not judging those things, just recognizing and doing what you can in the moment, controlling or trying to have awareness around what you can, but not necessarily judging yourself for feeling the very normal human emotion that everyone feels from the time. So that's my long-winded answer, but it came through very strongly for me.
And didn't we just learn clairempathy? It's one of the clairs is actually a sentience. It's actually a power. It's not at all that you shouldn't be feeling those, right? Like we literally just delineated that these things that you feel are part of your innate essence and part of your superpower. So I just like, I feel like it's such beautiful permission for you too, as you're giving permission to everyone else, that like, no, your feelings are magnificent. They're superpowers. So I love that came in, and that we can just reframe that and just make that a net positive for you, right? And not a net negative.
Right.
And I think this is just in our spiritual communities. There's a lot around this, right? Where we should overcome all of this. And maybe that's true. Maybe someday we really will be the kind of beings who can overcome it and can live in neutrality. And that's certainly the path of the yogi. Like that's one of the main objectives, is to like get to neutrality. But what if you're there, then what? Then like, guess what? If you already won the game, game over.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So like, it's okay sometimes to still be in the game. We want to be here.
I'm not floating yet.
Yeah. Good. Oh, well, thank you. That's so beautiful. And I totally resonate with you giving permission to particularly your audience. I feel like I can feel the resonance of that when you said that. Like your audience, really, really, you're helping them so much with what they are up to and trying to discover. So you're in service. Yeah, it's beautiful service.
Thank you.
Love that. Very good. Yeah, for me, initially I'm almost like my monkey mind is like shopping different, sites that I want to be at for the Akashic Records. So it's like going through like the mountain cave. Nah, not that one. I'll go through the water. And so it's like, it's really cool, but I can tell that I'm like almost forcing the various like slideshow of where I want this session to take place. And then what is actually consistent for me when I'm in deep meditation, which is not often, by the way, this is not something that I easily slip into. Usually I need like 20 minutes of breath work to get into a space of being able to just silence my mind, but which is why it was profound actually to be able to drop into this quickly. But I get what feels like a purple, almost like paint being spilled over my eyes, and it kind of like completely consumes my sight, at least when my eyes are closed, and it's this dark purple, and it's almost like I know, like, wow, okay, I'm in, and I'm shutting out all the other noise. So that's kind of where it took place for me, was in this just pool, this bath of purple, which is just amazing. And as far as the questions, the kind of the from the first one, the immediate response I got was like, hey man, you have the capacity to do all of the things, like all of the things that you are desiring. And I can't even articulate them yet. At 32 years old, I'm just freaking hungry and passionate and want to achieve the world. But all of the things I have the capacity to do. Followed up by beautifully prompted with your second question, which was, what will I take back? And I was given a recent memory of our Egypt trip where, we were gone for 3 weeks. We're gone for an entire month. We're not working. We're away from our devices for the most part. We both got, sick. You get mummy tummy over there, and you like completely cleansed. So you're completely diarrhea for 3 straight weeks. I lost 15 pounds. But when I came back and kind of started getting back into my life, I had more vitality than I've had in like 5-6 years, since my 20s. And so what came through is this message of emptying. And what to bring back and integrate is the practice and the benefit of emptying. And obviously I'm not going to like go on a literal purge, but energetically, and even in this 5-minute session, I felt empty and able to receive. And so like a clear takeaway for me was the practice of energetically or spiritually emptying. And so more time in this purple space for me to feel empty and step back into my life and be more capable to use this capacity for all these things that I want to do.
I love it. And what's so cool is, exactly what you said, that it's hard for you to reach that deep state where emptying is available. This is one of the reasons I love the Akashic Records, is like, what a hack, I'm like, this is like a spiritual biohack.
Yeah.
You can get into this energy field, and it's just, the template is just so easy for you to actually do the work that's important for you. So I love that actually came through, that was important for you, and that also you experienced that was a space in which you could do that kind of work and that emptying. And that's it. When we're thinking about our lifetime, all of us are up to big things. If you're listening to this podcast, I guarantee you're up to big things, and you wouldn't want all of the things that you want, Chase, right? If it wasn't part of your destiny, like it wouldn't even be in your aura to think about all of those things and bringing them in. And so we have to have these tools that help us hold these massive destinies that we all have. And I think it's, it is really one of the reasons I love the Akashic Records and the Kundalini Yoga, is like, it just helps you to hold this incredible dharma, destiny, life force, path, all of these things that you're both up to. And so I'm so glad you got that little snippet of like being able to empty and drop into that.
Yeah. I I too felt that the emptiness. And when you spoke to it, then it was like, oh yeah, definitely. I felt that too, which is, we are so used to consuming not only food, but consuming information all the time. Every time we look at our little supercomputer in our pocket, we are consuming information. And I think it's important sometimes to intentionally set that consumption aside for even just a few minutes a day. Like, time disappears when you're in that state, but yeah, it couldn't have been more than 5 or so minutes. And it is a total shift. So I am inviting us, it's a great reminder for us, but also the listeners, like, stillness is a nutrient. Emptiness is a nutrient that I don't think most of us are getting on a regular basis to the extent that we need. Kind of like nature, it's like we can always use more nature. I don't care who you are, you can use more nature. I don't care who you are, you could probably use more stillness in your life.
Sat Nam. Amen. All the things. I'm like, and I always think of that because I think, you think when you're in stillness that you're in nothingness, but actually you are in the place where all things are possible. Mm-hmm. So if you never go to the place where all things are possible, then you're basically denying yourself that you have that infinite possibility. And so I think especially for type A people out there, they're like, I have a list and I've got to go to the gym and I've got to cold plunge and So if you can think of like buy-in, ways that you can buy into stillness and feel like it's actually a place of great accomplishment, you can kind of co-opt yourself into maybe doing it more. And I may or may not be someone who's had to use that trick on myself. So I'm like, stillness is like you said, it's such a beautiful nutrient, and it's the place where everything can be created. So like, if you are up to big things, you have to make that investment.
Yep. You can't have a baby without a womb. You cannot create the darkness and the stillness and the void. And if you're not creating that void for yourself, there's probably not a lot of magical creation going on, which I think is a beautiful way to wrap up our conversation. And thank you again for just leading us through that.
That was
and
beautiful and amazing.
I didn't really know how much I needed that.
I'm so happy.
I am very grateful for you sharing your light and your love and your wisdom with us, and obviously all the listeners. Before we close out, I do want to give you a chance to, if people have resonated with your message, and if they want to learn more about you and what you do, what you offer, how can they do that?
Yeah, well, first I want to just say thank you so much. It was such an honor to be with both of you. And it's always so sweet when we drop into the Akashic Records because it's like a little soul bond. So thank you so much. It's kind of like a plant medicine ceremony where you're like, okay, we're homies now. So in terms of reaching out and connecting with me, if you're interested in the retreats and everything that we're up to in that realm, you can check out Be the Wellness, which is our website and kind of central hub for all of that. And B is spelled like a honeybee. So it's BEEthewellness.com. And then if you're interested in the Akashic training or having a reading or the Kundalini yoga or any of that yummy stuff, starseed-collective.com. Or you can just reach out to me on Instagram, starseed.collective. And I'm happy to just interface with you there. Because sometimes when you're getting into that world, it's kind of hard to navigate. So I'm always happy just to chat with folks and see where they're at and what's going on and how I can support them.
That's great. And of course, we'll have all the links and everything in the show notes in the description box. So check there if you missed any of what she just said there. But
yeah, and just complete stamp of approval. Like we have so many people in the space who just speak just so highly of you, all the impact that you're making in the world. It was such a no-brainer for us to like have this part one of hopefully many more future conversations. But some incredible friends that many of our listeners even know who work with you directly, go on some of your trips or partake in some of your retreats and events, and it's something I think that in the future we'd love to be able to cross paths with you on, and hopefully some of our listeners will too, because I just love what you're doing in the world.
Thank you guys. I know I already see the journeys we're going to take, so I'm so excited just to welcome you in, and thank you for welcoming me in. I really do feel that, and it's just such a sincere privilege to be walking the earth with people like you that are just devoted to making a difference, making an impact. It's really like heaven on earth. So I'm just so grateful. Thank you so much.
thank you. Okay, last question. It can be a quick answer if you like. What currently, this is the Medicin podcast, what currently feels like medicine for you?
Yeah, I have a daily devotional practice of about an hour and 20 minutes of kundalini yoga that I do every single morning. And that is definitely medicine. And then before I do my practice, I wake up, I dry brush my body, and I step into a cold shower. So like those are my, that's my medicine. That's my daily devotional practice. And those are the two things that have absolutely changed every level of frequency from head to toe and beyond.
Love it.
Yeah.
Oh, you are a badass for sure, because it takes a lot for me to step into a cold shower or a cold plunge. So I see you, and that's
girl. The fact that I do this is crazy town to me. So like, trust me, I like totally get like it's insane. I'm like, I hate the cold. What are you talking about?
I'm a Leo sun worshiper, and so I'm like, oh, cold.
Oh, that sounds terrible. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your light, as I said, and I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation, this episode. Check Vanessa out and everything she has to offer. If this resonated, she is definitely someone to keep your eye on and follow. And if you feel pulled, like we said, lean into it. Right. Thank you so much.
I couldn't agree more. Thanks, guys. Satnam.
Talk to you guys later. Go spread some light. Okay, bye.
Thank you so much for listening.
If you enjoyed that, check out right over here for some more fun clips.
Oh, and you're going to want to subscribe.
Bye.